Hello again, everyone. This is John Dupuy. That would be me. And this is Douglas Prater. Say hi, Doug.
Buddy.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, I'm the older one. He's the good-looking one. But anyway, we're here together, and it is episode what?
Number 9.
Number 9. Yow! Of Meditate on This. So really, really excited to be here, and got to do some of my practice this morning. I meditated for about 40 minutes, and I went to the gym, and a lot of good things. And when I was on, I was training my brain to, I think it was Gamma 40, one of our newer Gamma tracks that we, and I was also using Flow State also, which is one I haven't used for a while. We're talking about the tracks that we created, iAwake, to put us into flow states for meditative tools to heal, to get us into these altered states that are very desirable for what we do in the world and who we are and are becoming. So anyway, I was doing my, and I've made friends with the treadmill, which is something I really have resisted. And then, of course, about a year and 2 months ago, I had a massive heart attack and almost died. So they said, you really kind of need to, or the inner voice said you need to focus more on cardio. So I do. So and in the book about, who's the guy that wrote the book about forming good habits?
Oh, there's so many.
I know. Anyway, he's one of the du jour guys that's out there. And
James Clear?
Yeah, I believe so. He says to establish a new habit, a positive habit. We know it's pretty easy to do bad habits, right? But a positive habit, you have to have some kind of, cookie or reward. So when you finish it, there's something that you get into. So my reward is when I finish my cardio, I get to go lift weights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and people would think that's weird, but you understand what I mean, Doug, I'm sure. I mean,
yeah, it's an interesting cookie for some people.
For 40 years, whatever it's been now, I just like lifting weights. But I'm starting to fall in love with the cardio too now, because I've been doing that for, I don't know, a number of months, and it's just what I do. But while I'm doing that, I get my little teléfono inteligente, my smartphone, and I watch, either I listen to books, sometimes I just train, and other times I'll listen to lectures on YouTube or other places. So it's a way to do 2 practices at once. So I'm doing my mental practice, and I'm also doing my physical practice, and that works really well for me. But all that to say, how was your practice this morning, Guy?
It was pretty good. I'm taking a detraining week from weightlifting. I'm letting my body repair and recover a little bit, because I've been hitting that pretty hard the last couple of months. So this week I'm focusing on yoga and cardio. Got a 20 minutes on the elliptical machine this morning, and then a nice good yoga stretch routine took another 20 minutes or so. Meditation practice, I am getting back to basics. We have so many good tools that are good for different things, and some of them take you into crazy altered states. But when I'm really getting back to fundamentals, I'm doing profound meditation program again. So that's what I've been doing all week. And, PMP3 did it again this morning. Good hour-long meditation session. And it's really nice sometimes to recenter that way and focus on the fundamentals. I find that it helps overcome plateaus to go back and shore up those basics.
Yeah, and by focusing on the fundamentals or the foundation, you make it strong so you can build all the other stuff on top of that. Foundations are incredibly important. When they're weak,
and I don't mean to imply either that profound meditation program is in any way basic or foundational. It's a hell of a powerful tool, but
right.
What I mean is I'm not doing any of our more elaborate kind of fancy things. I'm going standard pure meditation.
Right.
So
if you're just old school entrainment,
right,
and you want your butta, I don't think we have any strict butta.
I don't think any of ours are.
Yeah, in the beginning of the experiments, they had these really kind of annoying sounds, and it worked, but everybody, who wants to listen to that stuff? So yeah, well, one of the things I'm doing, I am working on this book. It is called The Listening Society by Hansi Freinacht, and that is a pseudonym for I think a Danish and maybe a Dutch scientist or psychologist. No, they're philosophers actually. Anyway, and it's really, really inspiring. And it is also a manifestation, I feel, of something bigger that's going on in our culture, in the world culture, because, you know, there's really only one culture now. There's different parts of it, but because of the internet, and there's a couple of places such as North Korea where they don't have that, but they, you know, they stand out by the exception, you know, of the rule that we are all connected right now. But there's some really exciting things. And if you're familiar with Aquamap or Ken Wilber's lenses that he has us look through to kind of to put everything in its place and you know, understand the great complexity and the chaos and the evolution of the universe, well, then you know what I'm talking about. But the first lens is aqua. It stands for all quadrants, all lines, all levels, all states, and all types. I think I got that right. And the first one is quadrants. So in the upper right quadrant is where you can apply these lenses to anything or any event or any organization, but we're just talking about an individual human being. Your upper right quadrant is your physical body, okay? And your upper left quadrant is your interior life, spiritual, emotional, dream, soul, all that stuff, you know, that you can't put in a test tube and you can't do this. I mean, you can look at what the brain's doing when you're experiencing some of these things, and the brain will say, wow, the brain is activated, but it doesn't, just looking at the brain and the chemicals doesn't tell you what the experience is. That's something that has to be experienced or, you know, collected data and see if a lot of people are having experience and you have something significant. It's another way of ascertaining truth, both sides, both quadrants. Anyway, but then those have been my specialty, right? Kind of the focusing on the physical body, you know, practice, getting in shape. I mean, just the life-changing benefits of exercise, okay? Lifelong life-changing benefits in very positive ways. And the science it's just obvious. Okay, and then the upper left is the interior. And, you know, I trained to be a therapist. I've been, you know, been working on that stuff even before I knew I was working on it. Okay, so those have been my focus. But underneath that, you have the lower right and the lower left. And the lower left is the kind of collective interiors, the cultural beliefs and trust or lack of trust or what's going on between individuals. Again, it's not something that you can put in a bottle. I mean, you can look at behaviors and look at it that way, or the artifacts that are created or the memes, but it's also a collective interior as opposed to the individual interior. And then down the lower right, it's just everything else, all the stuff, right? The nature and earth and the internet. And, you know, like it or not, we are nature doing weird things. You know, we are not separate from nature. We didn't, you know, I know, contrary to some people, we didn't come from another planet as far as I know. Any can visit, but we came out of the world. We're not just came into the world. I think Alan Watts said that. He said we'd come into the world. We came out of the world. So, you know, the internet is nature doing some really trippy things, okay? So it's all nature. But in my work, like I said, I was working on the individual part, but now this kind of integral intuition is beginning to emerge in the two lower quadrants, the collective we space and the just foundational technology and all this stuff. And that's what this book, The Listening Society, is doing really well. And it's really pretty brilliant. And I'm only about 110 pages into it. And it's one of those things I just mark up, you know, all the time and take it really serious and go back to it. But let me see if I can get a quote here without.
Yeah, John, you're taking that one nice and slow because there's so much to process and digest. I see all the notes you're taking and how much you're sitting on there. So definitely not a weekend speed read in that.
Yeah. So anyway, it says, hence it should or must become a top political priority to support the psychological development of all citizens. Okay. I love that. And that's just right in the first. And then he goes on and says, basically, what needs to happen is that government, that the state, that our collective will, as we live together, is to create the conditions that happiness is possible for everyone. And they're also, they're very strong on not just humans, but all beings. And I really appreciate that about them. And they forward, and of course, these two people, I don't know if it's kind of a fictional thing, but they said when he was writing this book, he was meditating for 3 hours a day, working out for an hour a day, reading for 3 hours, and writing for 3 hours. Which when I told you that, your little 5 eyes lit up.
It sounds like the perfect life to me.
I know, it just, but, and I haven't got that far into the book, but I assume how we get about this transformational and making everyone happy is going to come out. I'm just not there yet. But when I heard that, I said, okay, this guy is somebody who's actually doing the work. Or maybe Hansi Freinacht is like a superhero invention of them. But anyway, what they're presenting is actually doing the work that needs to be done, the transformational practice. And that really turns me on, because that's what, as being a part of iAwake, I'm sure you've heard my rants at meetings and stuff. What we're doing here is transforming human beings who are going to transform the world. And our work, this transformation, is probably the most important thing that's going on right now, because we don't get it. We don't start, getting that 10% or getting to that tipping point. Things are going to just get worse. And it is obvious that the old systems are not working anymore. Our political system is hammered. The two-party system is just, and the electoral college and money and thank you, Putin, and all your buddies, corrupting. So it's just a goddamn mess, So as is the medical system in many cases, and there's right. And I do go to doctors and appreciate what they do, but you've got to watch out for what they prescribe. And maybe some other things. It's like, do your own homework and do your own investigations. But yeah. So but then there's this that they call it meta-modernism, which is not just rejection. You go to MSNBC, or in Fox News, and they just hate each other and they just against each other all the time. And I tend to lean toward the progressive, because I think they have a little more together than just Fox News, but they got their issues too, obviously, and people have been pointing that out. And I don't think progressivism is necessarily the postmodernism that you find, crazy stuff you find going on in universities. A lot of the universities in our country, anyway, where they shout down anybody who has a different opinion, and it gets this very strange political correctness that it gets offensive. And you can't shove kindness down. You can't shove language and kindness down people's throats, or it'll cause the opposite reaction.
Yeah, there's an important means and ends distinction here. No matter how noble the ends appear, if you go about it with the wrong means, it's not the right action, the right way to do it, or at least that's my stance.
Yeah, and of course, what I'm coming to is that what we need to do is practice respect and kindness. So people that you don't agree with, people you do agree with, people who are, on the planet here, namaste, we're all have the divinity within us, even people that don't look like they do. And I won't mention any of the obvious things that come to mind right now are people, but they do. And so we just have to go. And so, you said, okay, so, you're a gay person, or you're, one of the LGBTQ, whatever latest letters are, and you've gotten a bad rap, and you've been, persecuted, and you've been beaten up. And all these historical things, and that's pretty bad. And you're pretty pissed about it. I could hear, and you want me to call you it or something. I'm not sure. I don't think it's one of them, but one of the new pronouns that's somewhere between male and female. And, okay, you request that. I'll try to, if that helps you heal and helps you feel that I'm actually listening to you and hearing what's bothering you and your pain, I'll try to do that, respectfully. So I think that way is going to do it. Otherwise, we're just pouring fuel or gasoline on a really bad fire, where we're just all, just after each other and going for the jugular all the time. And so anyway, I think progressive is just like an idea that we want to help everybody to live a dignified life, and not just, Ayn Randy and, well, if you're not smart and brilliant and beautiful like me, fuck you, and you're just fertilizer for my great projects or something, kind of that weird thing that the only people who matter are the people that have a bunch of money and are super talented or whatever her trip was. But I mean, I'm mentioning her because she's really the unstated huge influence on a lot of the neoconservatism that's going on, even that people don't talk about her because she was kind of an unsavory character in a lot of ways. So you want to comment on that, Doug?
Yeah. Ayn Rand, I studied quite a bit back in the day as part of my own evolution and growth process. And certainly she got a lot of things wrong. She really hated the idea of altruism and talked about how altruism is this ultimate.
Yeah, good is bad and bad is good.
Focus on. Well, there's some good that she talked about enlightened self-interest, and really the disconnect there is that in helping the world and doing things that benefit the we space in the lower fourth quadrant, that can be framed as an enlightened self-interest. And there's some credit there in that she emphasized the virtue of hard work, of really doing what it takes to study, to improve yourself and do some things. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding and flack there, but man, taken to the extremes, there's some dangerous ideas and some misunderstandings and some things that she didn't really get. In looking back through that material now, I'm just aghast at some of the things she advocated in there. But certainly this is a case too of taking the good ideas there, the inclusion, the respect from it, and moving forward with it, because there's a lot to be learned when we look at it with an open-minded eye.
Well, yeah. Well, I started out being very open-minded, and then I noticed everybody was reading it were turning into assholes. I go,
right.
why are you turning into an asshole? What is so powerful about this writing? And so they just it's just selfishness and self-interest is good. Like selfishness is good and altruism is bad. Just kind of flips this. And socialism is awful. In the latter part of her life, when she was really ill, she had no problem using our socialized medical system, Medicare and all that. She was all over it, but she didn't want anybody else to have it. It's like, come on, get some consistency. And during World War II, and she was an expat from Eastern Europe, a Jew, and what she was more concerned about was FDR turning the country into a socialist nation, and not the Holocaust, where people were being. It's like, come on, lady. Sometimes you just have to drop your shtick and pick up the bigger shtick of the moment. Is how to keep the world from becoming taken over by the Nazis. So anyway, I've got things with it.
It definitely devolves into, like you said, that I got mine and to hell with the rest of you. That
and all about hard work and finding yourself and doing that. But the reason that we do these things is because in what is real wealth, I had a conversation, and this is not what I want to talk about. This is all a footnote aside to get what I want to talk about. No, where was it? I think it was at a airport or something like that. And this woman, she was pretty green, she's pretty progressive. And, we talked about wealth, and she was like, she all that stuff, it's not good to be wealthy and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, true wealth for me is that you never have to turn away or not respond or help a person you feel moved to help. You have enough abundance that you can step in and give. And when you have that, you're a rich man, and that would mean not just money, but money's a big part of it. Okay. I've lived with money and without money, and guess what? It's better to have money. Money doesn't buy you happiness, but poverty sure as hell buys you a whole bunch of grief and stress and anxiety and depression. It's awful. Okay. And I don't want any of my human brothers and sisters to have to go through that. Or have to live in that state. It's just not good for anything.
And the thing that the thing that a lot of conservatives miss is that there are so many systemic socioeconomic factors that don't give people the opportunities to do the hard work that people like neocons and Ayn Rand advocate. They just don't have the opportunities, the time, the resources to get started. And so creating that opportunity is
and
part of our responsibility, so that we can help one another, our brothers, our sisters, our human family, and our life form family.
Sure. Yeah, and my last comment on Ayn Rand, yes, she was really brilliant, and I've read the books, and I've seen her interviews, and really smart, but she was a narcissist, okay? There's only one perspective that mattered, hers. And where do we see that today? Anyway, I'll let you guys fill in the blank. So that's a problem. It's a psychological disorder. So, you know, if you, like a student of mine one time who suffered with depression, he said, yeah, you experience depression, but don't make a philosophy out of it. Okay. Yeah, you're a narcissist. You're clinically a narcissist. Don't make a philosophy out of it, which is what she did, you know, and draped it with a lot of really cool sounding stuff. And of course it appeals to what? The narcissist part of us, you know? So anyway, that's my last word for now on dear old Ayn. Yeah, but what I want to talk about are the positive things that are starting to happen, you know. And I was listening to Michael Pollan, I think that's his name, who wrote the book How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah.
And it's this new exploration of psychedelics. And most of all the information that he has, and I've been a student of psychedelics I started using them when I was around 13 or 14, probably 1971, you know, a little 13-year-old taking psilocybin, going to school. No, not the set or setting recommend. It was really stupid. But I got a taste of it. And you know, I was going into the drug thing. And then of course I joined this religious thing that kept me away from drugs and alcohol, mostly throughout my adolescence, which is really good because, you know, we're so susceptible to these negative influences, and using these powerful mind-altering psychoactive substances and plants when you're not prepared, when it's not age appropriate. When you're in the age you're trying to form an ego, a healthy ego, you don't need to dissolve it at that point. At least that's my perception, you know. So once you have that ego formed, and, you know, all of us, I mean, who's ever formed a perfect ego, you know, a self vehicle? I don't know. There's lots of holes and dinks and stuff, which meditation helps us not only repair, or the interior work that we do, but it also helps us recognize it and see it and go, oh, that's called self-awareness. You look in the mirror and go, oh, ooh, okay, maybe I can do that differently, or that's a really shitty way to see the world and other people and other things. You know, I said I wouldn't bring her up again. So I started out that way. Then later on, after many experiences, I ended up in the Bay Area in San Francisco going to graduate school at JFK University, where I was studying transpersonal psychology, of all things. And that's where I became interested in psychedelics again. And I was living right off the park there, just about 4 or 5 blocks from Haight-Ashbury. And, you know, where all this stuff happened. And it wasn't happening there anymore. It's kind of, you know, passé at that point. And I was, you know, surrounded in San Francisco, surrounded by these incredible bookstores. So I was out combing the bookstores to learn about psychedelics, because I was beginning to experiment with mushrooms, with LSD, with ecstasy, with CB2. Anyway, some other things that were around at the time, and it wasn't for fun at all. All right, but the only books I could find were books that were from the 60s. And maybe early 70s, and then just nothing. It went away. And then I was invited to be part of a group where some of the best minds, Shulgins were there, and just a lot of people who were experimenting using these mind-altering substances. And we get together once a month in Marin talk about all these things. There were no drugs on the premises because everybody's pretty sure there were federal agents at the party, to get together. So it was drug free, but we could talk about it and compare notes. So that was really cool. And I was a singer songwriter, and I'd written a song about, I don't know, the new rave thing that was just emerging, in warehouses taking over. It's kind of early 80s. And it was like a thing. And I sang this on a stage celebrating the anniversary of the Summer of Love. And afterwards, it's like these young guys came up, and I was young too. But anyway, they came up and they went, "Hey man, you're singing about us. You got to come to our thing." And so these were some of the leaders of the rave thing that was going on. So I kind of got this inside invitation. And in the early days, the rave thing was really idealistic.
Yeah.
They thought they were going to change the world, the music, and eventually, though, what happened, what I saw was that it was just, MDMA can do some really great things, but man, a little bit is better than a bunch. Its therapeutic benefits are only work if you do it very seldom, or maybe once in your life, or maybe once a year, because it's very associated with amphetamines. Really burns you out, your serotonin and dopamine. And so I saw people just starting to use more and more of this stuff. And then, of course, after, it's not that great an amphetamine. So, and you're not getting the static stuff anymore. So then you just move it. Anyway, it started getting dark, and the ugly drugs started moving in. And so at that point, I moved to the wilderness and went on Vision Quest and said, I'm going to use the wilderness as my teacher and my guide for this inner exploration, which was a wise thing to do. But I left that whole thing behind because I just didn't think we were up to the task at that point. But now it's changed. There is a new, and it's being talked about, not just outside of the loop of power and academia and science, but it's being included in really responsible ways. And it's coming out, and I'm really excited about it. And anyway, I've been talking a lot. Doug, you want to?
Well, the danger with all this stuff, what happened with rave culture, and arguably what happened with the hippie culture too, is that it deteriorated into hedonism, into experience chasing, and these
Sure.
things are very powerful tools that alter your mind in very profound ways. Your neurochemistry, especially with something like MDMA, can be powerfully altered. Your receptors, your serotonin receptors, your dopamine system, your dopaminergic system, and all these pathways can be permanently altered by falling into this stuff. And when you're using it just to chase pleasurable experiences and not getting the learning out of them that they were initially intended to be used for when people started this idealistically, there's a lot of danger there. But I'm so glad to see people having learned those lessons and coming back to using them for incredibly beneficial things, healing from depression, learning about connectedness with one another, healing PTSD. It's such a relief to see the culture changing to a place where this stuff is coming back out of the underground, and that people, responsible people, are looking at the ways that we can really use this, because it's something that we definitely need if we're going to continue to evolve and get ourselves out of this mess that we have created as a people, as a society.
Yeah, and I haven't done this stuff in many years. Okay, as like, and then we created iAwake, which is a way to alter consciousness, and of course now I think these things can probably come together. And I think one of the things about the psychedelic experience, it can be a mystical, unifying, paradigm blowing, huge opening, but you need to have practices to help you integrate that into a lifelong path, and not just, hey, I went there and talked to some really wise beings and they told me some good stuff, and then I went back and just kept doing the same stuff I was doing. So you need to have a transformational practice. But if you put those two together, you may just really have something extraordinary. I'm pretty excited about it. And You know, and I've had to change my mind about a lot of things. I've changed my mind about marijuana. I think it probably should be legal now. Why? Because I'm using CBD oil after my heart attack, and it's really helped, especially with you know, uh, pain and sleep. I do, you know, and the CBD oil that I'm using has a little bit of THC in it, but not that much. But I do it right before I go to bed, so I don't particularly. I mean, I didn't like marijuana. I mean, I did in the beginning, and then it changed really rapidly where it wasn't a pleasant experience. So I'm not looking to get high on marijuana, boy. But I sleep, man, I sleep so well. I maybe wake up one time, you know, in the early morning, go to the bathroom, and then I sleep until Lucy, my dog, goes, all right, it's time for a walk, you know, and I'm okay, I'm good to go. But I know, and I'm not hungover, and I know that, you know, sleep is so important, and it's really, really helped me a lot. Of course, so has the iAwake tracks that we do. Have helped me sleep better. But this plus that, yes, and works really well. So, and yes, can you abuse marijuana? Of course. Can you get addicted to it? Yeah, psychologically, yeah. Physically, I don't know. But, you know, and there's a stereotype of, you know, just the pothead and all this stuff, which is, as funky as that may be, it's much better than being an alcoholic, you know, or these other, you know, legal drugs, cigarettes. So I'm encouraged to that, and I think there's great medicine in it, and the science about what, you know, CBD oil does. It's not just treating one particular symptom; it's a whole systemic revitalizer and heals so many things. So I think it's great, you know, and that was, you know, I had kind of these rigid ideas that have disappeared. I was also kind of like, psychedelics, we're too stupid, we can't figure it out, Now I'm starting to go, okay, maybe the times are here. Also, kratom or kratom.
Yeah, there are so many great medicinal and even recreational uses for it. You know, and you talked about the potential of a psychological addiction and the stereotypes and some of these things. And one of the things that legalization does is brings all that out of the shadows and helps us change the conversation and get rid of those stereotypes. And it helps the people who need help. It gives them a pathway to seek help without fearing stigmatization or legal consequences or any of the other negative things that go along with that. So that people can use it medicinally and get the good benefits without some of the negative outcomes, some of which are related to this lower right quadrant with the legal system and the financial system. And when we're forced to go into dangerous situations and risk the permanent consequences for ourselves and our families by getting caught up in some of these situations or putting ourselves in harm's way to procure this stuff, it creates a dangerous and violent black market that we don't need to be participating in. We don't want to, and it is unfairly biased against people who are already disadvantaged and struggling to make their way in the world. It perpetuates this division in classes and the inequality between people to keep our legal structure around these substances the way it has been for so long. And that's part of why this conversation is so important.
And, you know, and I mean, part of why, you know, marijuana and psychedelics, because it was part of the counterculture. Okay. And it's like, you know, the country was terribly divided when I was a teenager, like it is now. It may be more terribly divided now than it was then, but you were in the Vietnam War, either, you know, if you were a patriotic American, you support our, you know, the cause and win, you know, beat back the commies. And the other people, no, it's ridiculous. What are we doing over there? It just seemed an obscenity. So that was a split. And of course, I was growing up in Texas at the time, Houston, Texas. And, you know, I had long hair. Man, it was dangerous to have long hair, be a young, you know, like 13, 14-year-old hippie. You had to be able to run fast and know how to get out of places quickly. Because, you know, angry people in pickup trucks would come and want to mess you up. So a lot of that, you know, they were making all these laws, in Washington while they were swilling their scotch, talking about how horrible all these things were, because it was a mind altering, paradigm altering, and the people that were, you didn't see a lot of people going, doing acid trips or using mushrooms and going back. It's like Vietnam. Yes, we just need to go and kick some more butt and win that war. It's not the kind of insights that were emerging from these mystical unitive experiences. So it was seen as very dangerous to the system, which it was. Okay. But now, we've gone through the revolution of technology in the last couple of decades. It's just like, what? And of course, it turns out that a lot of these people that were creating all these incredible transformational technology had also had transformational experience using psychedelics. Mm-hmm. Okay, because psychedelics help you see new patterns and connect everything. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. So maybe it's all coming to this new thing that we can start. And we were talking to Roger Walsh the other day, and if you guys know him, he's taught at the medical school, University of California, Irvine, for 41 years. He's just like finishing that. He's a great wise man, written many books, was a mentor to Ken Wilber in the early days, and is a psychiatrist, has a couple of PhDs, I think, on the side, and really just bright guy. And he quoted Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. I mean, yeah, you can get on, pick up your smartphone and get in one of your news apps and just see what's going on. But then on the other side, there's some really cool things happening. And it seems to me, as an integralist, we integrate, right? We take it all. And that's one of the things about integral consciousness or second tier consciousness, that you can, and getting back to old Jordan Peterson, our good buddy, there's things I don't agree with him on, but some things I do agree with. And one of the things he's brought back is that, Western civilization, it's not all bad. Some wonderful things happened. The Beatles, the Herman's Hermits, well, maybe not so much, but the Beatles and, sorry, I just had to throw
We'll forgive you for that one.
I'm every day. I am. And I read some time ago that antibiotics, in the first world has given us, the individual on average, 30 more years of life. 30 more years of life. And has it done some bad things and rotten things? Yes. But it's done, but everything that we've done is really fixable if we can fix our heads. If we can just fix our head. No, it's really not okay to dump all our plastics in the ocean. Okay. It's really not okay to foul the air. It's really not okay. Just basic stuff, right? That at some point, I think we can get together and just behave in different ways. Then the amazing things will just be more amazing. And we'll live in a happier, safer world. And we want to be happy, because when we're happy, we will, and not just, manic, weird, drug-fueled, happiness, but I'm talking about deep, profound, soul-centric happiness of the individual. We could do so much, and nobody has to be left behind. So
it's the difference between euphoria and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that fulfillment, which comes from the growth you're talking about, the power of psychedelics, the power of meditation practice, is the way we move up through the tiers in integral theory into increasing levels of inclusion. The wider your own self-identity is, the better our world is going to be. And that's what the focus on science and technology exclusively has left out, is the we quadrant, the focus on relationship and becoming greater whole, expanding our identities, which is one of the reasons that all of this is so important and necessary to pull ourselves out of this hole we're in. But as you said, the science and technology were very necessary. And even to take it back to earlier in our conversation, the development of a healthy sense of self and self-esteem is a necessary step on this ladder. The problem comes when our growth gets arrested at this point, and that's why it's so good to see people looking at all of this stuff again, continuing to do the work that we have to do to save ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And at that, at that point with this new emerging metamodernism, it's a synthesis. It's not just rejecting, modernity. It's not just rejecting post-modernity. It's not rejecting what came before that, traditional and the tribal and stuff. It's bringing forth the best of all of that and putting together in a new synthesis that's greater than just the sum of the parts. And it's amazing. It's like I'm really interested in the psychedelic revolution. What is it like to use iAwake tracks when you're journeying in these ways? I think it's probably incredible. I've never done it. I haven't done psychedelics in a long, long time, decades. But I'm just getting to the point where I'm kind of open to it again. And so if anybody's done it, has experience, let me know. I'd really be interested in the data, what you're finding. And, I just recommended to someone that that I love and concerned with, who has lost himself in drugs and meth, and he's been treatment after treatment and all this stuff, and he's just getting his ass kicked. He's dying. I said, man, get a ticket to Peru. Go to one of these ayahuasca ceremonies things, at least you have a shot, because sometimes you need something really powerful to blast you out of the darkness and this horrible prison that you've gotten yourself into that seems, there's no way out. And basically except suicide seems to be what a lot of people do. So I'm, and I haven't done ayahuasca. It's not been the thing, but I hear it's not a recreational experience.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where having a guide is so important.
You might be puking and shitting yourself, and on the inside, you're often gonna get the shadow of your own individual and collected stuff just right there in your face, and then it's gonna take you through that. So yeah, it's powerful stuff. So anyway, I wouldn't recommend psychedelics or powerful things for anybody unless you really, really feel called to do it. And is curiosity a good enough reason? Sure. Yeah, we're curious. We want to explore. Why do we go to the moon? Because we, I don't know, because we want to see what things look like on the moon. But if you have, I don't know, just got to use discretion and wisdom. And if you lean toward psychosis, probably not a good thing. But also now they're being, and this is something we knew in the 60s, which I've never done, a guide. I was like, a guide? You can actually help somebody help you? What a good idea. I remember after about 5 or 6 vision quests, I found out that you could actually have whole community support you on this and not just do it by yourself. And I thought, wow, that's a unique idea. So being the introvert and the individualist that I am, but yeah, so take it seriously, and if you can't take it seriously, if you don't take it seriously, well, life is pretty serious, and we got to make the right decisions, how we live our lives, the habits that we do or don't do, transformational positive habits, and finding our calling and doing all the work that's necessary to bring that together. But boy, there's never been a better time in the history of our human family to do this stuff, because we understand so much about so much, and we're able to start bringing it together in ways that are just extraordinary. And we can become conscious of our evolution and our own individual and our collective evolution, and do something, and not just be the products of it, but become pilots in this journey to become and transform, and to help us from annihilating ourselves and all these other species that we, in our unwise ways, aren't taking account of. So, and as a man said, all you need is love, right? Yeah. And that's a funny thing about psychedelic experience. A lot of people, I was listening to Palin talking today about a woman who had a psychedelic experience. I think she'd been suffering from cancer, and she'd overcome it, but she was terrified it was going to come back anyway. She had a very transformational experience. She said she felt like she was just surrounded and bathed in God's love. And he said, well, you're an atheist, aren't you? And he said, well, yeah. And I still am. So what's the God's love? He says, I don't know. I just can't find any better language to describe what I experienced, right? So psychedelics will take all you need is love from being a silly, burnout, stupid cliche to being, oh, yeah, got it. It's real. Oh, my God, for lack of a better word. So, hey, exciting times, folks.
Yeah. So send us your emails if you have experience using iAwake tracks with this stuff or whatever it is. Find our email address there. We'll post it down below the video. If you liked what you heard today, hit the like button, subscribe, leave your comments, let us know. And thank you again, John, for another excellent discussion. I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, thank everybody. And hey, I think we're going to be back and probably have Roger Walsh with us here soon. And we were talking about that yesterday. So, hey, keep practicing and keep questing and keep becoming the you that you need to be and we need you to be. Okay, so we love you, and we'll see you, be with you next time. God bless.